or everyone kind of an overview, if you don't mind me jumping in now.
No, please do. I just started the recording, so we're good to go.
Okay, cool. To give you kind of an overview of what we want to do today, we'll talk a little bit about us individually, and then we'll get into the podcast and what the idea of the podcast is and the purpose. From there, and if you don't mind, because there's 4 different sections, right? For each section, we want to open it up to a Q&A, because I understand that if we talk about resumes and then 20 minutes later we're talking about someone else, someone forgets their question or it might not seem that relevant. So we'll go from each section and then open up to a Q&A and then a general Q&A at the end. Cool. First topic is going to be resume. I think that's the number one that every college student is looking at. Then Dan's going to jump into the importance of LinkedIn, both from getting noticed and from building your social network. Afterwards, Dan's going to jump into why we should take every interview. And then I'll piggyback off that and talk about how students can best prepare for interviews and what we've seen through our experience. So that being said, I'm just going to kind of dive into me. My name's Matt Kresko. I'm actually an alum of SEMO. I have been recruiting professionally for about 7 years, but realistically over a decade. If you're going to go all the way back to my Greek life, I was actually a member of Pi Kappa Alpha Epsilon Iota down at SEMO, and I did a lot of recruiting for them as well. So recruiting has always been something that I've been passionate about. I've done it in both the agency side, so where I work for one company, but I would look for somebody for another company. And then about 2.5 years at Nestle Purina, which has one of the most robust and best developed recruitment infrastructures that I've ever gotten the chance to see. And then about 1.5 years ago, I decided to start my own company that's focused on sales, marketing, and at really every level. And then yeah, Dan and I have known each other for a while, and we started talking about the podcast, but that's enough on me. Dan, you want to go a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks so much for giving us this platform to speak to some students. That's what we're passionate about. And so really appreciate that, Dan. My name's Dan Greiner. I own one of the top mortgage recruiting firms in the United States. So I work with probably 60 to 80 clients at a time, depending on the market and the volume and hiring needs and whatnot. So the reason why I personally want to put the podcast on was because I talked to so many CEOs and presidents and HR managers and hiring managers, and just being a recruiter and getting their feedback on what they want to see, from a college student who's graduating or for somebody looking for an internship. So that was kind of what sparked the idea of putting together the Internship podcast. I'm also a member or an advisor of FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America, which is a high school program. And then I also judge the statewide DECA competition, which is the marketing competition that in the state of Missouri. I don't know in Illinois or other states what they call it, but DECA for sure in Missouri. And so just being around the students and getting an idea of what questions they're having for us really, kind of sparked this whole podcast thing. So hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of why. And
Yep. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say the whole goal for the podcast is to help you guys out there navigate those decisions and really set the foundation for you to be successful as you transition from an internship to a career, your first job. How can we help you with kind of hacking your way through and separating yourself from the competition in terms of that job search, especially right now with what's going on. So
yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback off that, Dan and I were in the situations where we were in college and we didn't know what the hell we wanted to do. I changed my major 4 to 5 times in college. I got in sales right out of college. Like, there's really no point in your career where you truly know exactly what you're going to do and what you're going to be doing. You just roll with the punches. And as you develop experience, you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, right? And so I think the podcast really exemplifies that, and it shows our personal stories to give a little bit of value, to tell those stories for entertainment, but also we provide resources and play-by-play how-to stuff to go along with any other resources that your career services center might have. So that being said, the first topic I want to talk about is resume writing. And I'm going to touch on each of these. We're going to touch really high level. And then, like I said, we'll open it up to questions. And if there's no questions, that's perfectly fine. We can jump into the next one, but we'll also develop, or we're going to send out an email with our contact information if you want to hit us on email, Instagram, or listen to the podcast for the resources. So a couple of things on resume writing. I'd say the first thing, questions we always get with college students is, where do I put my education, right? I think your education is going to be, for the most part, the most important piece in this step of your career, right? So you want your education up top, just to kind of showcase that. You know, if you're working in a bar or a restaurant or a car wash or whatever it is, you're going to develop like real world experience. But for the most part, right out of college, they want to know, where did you go to school? So real simple, put that up top. And then the GPA question, right? Do I put my GPA on my resume? The rule I go by is, if it's above a 3.0, put it on there, because I know that I didn't have above a 3.0, and I don't think any employer was particularly interested in my 2.75 GPA, right? So those are the basics, right? And then from there, how you want to structure your resume. And this is just my opinion. There's obviously more than one way to skin a cat, but obviously the basics: spelling, grammar, making sure everything looks neat and clean. And then I would say, for each experience that you have, you're going to want to have 5 to 7 bullets. 5 to 7 bullets, each bullet no more than 2 lines long. As a recruiter, the last thing I want to do is read paragraphs upon paragraphs from people, right? I want nuts and bolts. I want meat and potatoes. But on the flip side of that, I don't want 1 to 2 word bullets, right? And so a little bit of an exercise that Dan and I have put together on how you can do this is by taking it can be a blank piece of paper, it can be a Word doc or an Excel sheet, and you're going to list off the position that you had, and then you'll list every single bit of experience that you had in that role, right? Doesn't matter if it was, serving, it doesn't matter if it was washing dishes, cleaning tables, whatever it is, you're going to list that out. And then on the next column, the idea is to elaborate on that, right? You want to be able to qualify what it is that you did. No matter what it was, you want to be able to show that you did it well, or use your creative writing skills to not lie, but to really just kind of put a light on the importance of it. So I actually took a job description, and I took a couple of bullets from that job description. This was a resume. A buddy of mine I helped a while back ago. He was a service person at Waterway. So he washed cars at Waterway. And I took a couple of the bullets that he had. One was washing cars, right? He just put washed cars, which is fine. But again, we want to give more in this. So one of the ways that I kind of helped him pump that up a little bit was, was customer service to all clients, upsold car washes, and little pieces like that. And I'm actually blanking on what I said. Oh, sold car washes to current clients and upsold premium packages to prospective clients, right? So stuff that I can't necessarily remember all the time, but if I'm sitting down and looking at it, and if you're looking at it on a piece of paper, you can typically find a better way to write it. So the big thing here, understand everything that you've done, right? And then once you write out everything you've done, you want to put the impact that you might have had in each of those. So you want to be able to quantify it or qualify it to where you had an impact on the business. And then on top of that, put your awards, put your accolades. Like if you got promoted, it doesn't matter what kind of job it is. If you got promoted, if you got employee of the month, I don't care if you got the Rah Rah Team Spirit Award for one day, like anything that you do or you can put is going to show that you're the type of employee that at some point in time went above and beyond the call of duty. So those are probably the biggest things that I have on resume writing, but obviously there's a lot of other ways that we can go off on this. Are there any questions that anyone has?
And students, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or we've got a live chat feature. So please enter any questions that you don't want to say out loud, enter those into the live chat. Gentlemen, the things that we find a lot of times with college students working in career services, students are generally undervaluing their experiences. And I'm so glad you brought up that experience with Waterway, because we work with so many students that have experience with Waterway.
Yeah.
They have experience in retail. We have experience in fast food. And there are a lot of times a student doesn't see the value in what they've done in retail or fast food. And so that's a huge thing, is trying to get them to see that value and then explain that value in the bullet point.
Yep. And a lot of times you don't realize it, right? Because you do your job day in and day out. All of a sudden you get used to it, right? So it's just like, well, I'm kind of doing the same stuff over and over again. But it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're looking at yourself as a cog in the wheel. Like, you have a purpose and you're doing something to contribute to the overall goal of whether it's the team, the small team, the actual site, or the corporation as a whole.
Yeah, and I think that like you're building some type of beneficial experience in any job that you take, whether it's working at McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, all the way up to a corporate level sales job. There are some skills that you're getting from one that relate to the other, and you just have to do a good job of explaining and communicating, how, being a teller or front of line at McDonald's is similar to selling, recruiting services or whatever, right? So there's a way to do it though.
That's awesome. So for you guys, what's a resume killer?
Well, for me, the paragraphs, just paragraph after paragraph, a lot of times I will just skip it, to be honest with you.
We just had a dog walk in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Got some company. So whenever we see these resumes that just, they're very hard to navigate. Like, does this person have the skill set that we're really looking for? That's my big thing. I guess that's my big pet peeve.
Yeah, I'd say there are, the paragraph's probably a killer. Like, just looking at when you're, when I worked at Nestle Purina, right? Fortune 500 company, 40 plus recruiters, you're going through, a lot of your job is a little bit, you're going through resumes constantly.
Very quickly.
So a lot of times as a recruiter, I'm not, if I'm working for a director of marketing, right? If I'm working on that position, I don't necessarily know every bit about that position, right? I'm not supposed to know. I'm supposed to know the surface level stuff and make sure they're both a technical and cultural fit. So what I'll do, I'm designed as a recruiter to look through and grab out little bits and pieces of digital marketing, social media, whatever it might be for that role. So if I see paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, it's going to be harder for me to find it, right? So you want to put the most pertinent information up front. I'd say a lack of, and on, like we said, the opposite end of that, the lack of information is going to be even more of a killer, right?
Yeah. One thing for me is if you just list out the job description as your responsibilities, usually okay, I get it. You design, you know how to design a flyer, right? That should be known for you to even apply for this job, right? So listing out the very simple, common sense stuff is one of the things where it's kind of that's just filler. So how do you get really specific into those skill sets that you personally have? Kind of separates some people too, for me.
Yeah. And every company is going to be different. So I would say, if you hear some horror stories about a misspelled word and then the resume goes completely to the trash, I think in this day and age, there shouldn't be people like that. And if there's companies that actually do that and throw resumes in the trash for minor errors like that, then you probably don't want to work for that company anyway.
I will say, just to add, and then I'll let you go, sorry, but it is pretty easy to not mess up there too, right? There's autocorrect or whatever, make sure you reread it and try your best there. And if one thing's wrong, like Matt said, hopefully they give it a pass. But at the same time, don't just don't go by without reviewing it before you submit it. And then I guess the final thing is, maybe update that resume for every for every job you apply to. So it's a little different. You tweak it a little bit every time you apply for, different types of jobs, I guess.
So it looks like we've got a question from our chat. As a journalism major, I was told to create my resume for the people in the industry and just put my experience with journalism things. So she's asking, do I still put that fast food experience on her industry specific resume? So what do you guys think about that? First, industry specific resume, is establishing that work ethic with those other types of jobs important?
I think it is. It's going to depend on the company. If as a journalism major, if you want to put your journalism stuff first, like every bit of experience, sure. But if you were, let's say it was a journalism, and again, this is just from my lens here. If I see that someone's a journalism major and they have a journalism internship and they showed like the different things, that they've done, they've got a link to maybe a few of their pieces of work. But if I also see that during that time, maybe it was unpaid internship, that they were also working 20 to 30 hours or whatever, 10 to 20 hours at McDonald's during the same time, that's going to jump out as work ethic to me, right? That's going to jump out as somebody that's kind of paving their way through and somebody that's working to be paid, working to learn, and they understand the value of hard work. That's more of an intangible thing. And I don't necessarily know if all companies would do that, but from my perspective, I think that should 100% still be put on there.
So for me, the way I look at it is it depends on how much journalism experience you have before you formulate that resume, because you should for sure highlight any type of content or journalism that you've done first. And if you've done a lot, then maybe McDonald's doesn't matter, right? Because you have so much that you can put on there and you have a portfolio and you can show some of your work. And so maybe you could remove it at that point. But I have hiring managers who will say, hey, I want somebody that's worked at a fast food restaurant actually, because they know how fast paced that can be. And to Matt's point, the work ethic. But again, it comes back to, if you have a lot of experience, then maybe you don't have to put it on there. But if you have zero journalism experience and you're just applying, you're looking for that entry level thing, you got to put something on there, and so, but highlight some of the projects you've done for school. And I would put that stuff at the top for that particular type of industry. And again, this is a great question, by the way, because there's so many different industries and so many different ways to formulate a resume based on an industry. So great question.
So here's a question about resumes. What are your feelings on photos on resumes?
Did you listen to our podcast?
I haven't gotten to that one yet until
we talked about this on a podcast.
Okay, good.
So it's okay. And this is why I didn't bring this up in deal breakers, right? Because it's not a deal breaker. It's not someone that's going to say, hey, this person put a picture on there, they're completely eliminated. But they're also not going to say, damn, that's a really nice suit jacket, we need to get that guy in here, right? Yeah. It's one of those things where we look at and we talked about it. It's like when it's, and I try to be light with this, but it's like, don't put it probably, it's just, you can, but realistically it's more funny. Like I think when we've had times where somebody has sent in a resume and the first thing I notice is a picture of this guy wearing these big stunner shades and is so it's more of a, no, you put a professional picture on LinkedIn, they'll find you if they want to, right?
Yeah, for sure. So my opinion is, and just so you guys know, that when a resume comes in with a photo, it will be talked about for sure, whether it's between two recruiters or a recruiter and a hiring manager. But a lot of times it's kind of like, what are they doing? So, but I will say for like a creative role, or if you're a photographer or something like that, like maybe that's the right place to put it. And
yes.
Again, back to that journalism one where industry specific, you got to be smart about it. But if you're an accountant and you're like, I'm going to throw my mug up there and see what happens, like you probably could skip and get
fine. And so like Dan, to go off Dan was saying, there's definitely creative ways to do it. If you're applying to like the St. Louis, what's it called? Like if you're applying to the animal shelter, right? And you want to put a picture of your dog and your cats in there or whatever. Or if you want to get creative and you, let's say, applied to like Nestle Foods and you have a picture and you're holding every piece of Nestle food that you can buy or whatever, it's like there's some creative ways that will get you, could get you noticed, and especially on the creative side, graphic design, copywriting, things like that, any type of digital advertising or marketing, whatever. But for the most part, if you're just asking like, should I put a professional picture in the top of my page? I'd say you don't need it. And you probably, besides maybe giving a couple people laughs if you look kind of funny in it.
Yeah, great. Looks like here's a question from the chat. Somebody's asking that he read on a website that it's best to include keywords on resumes. How should I identify these keywords and how should I use them in my resume?
Yeah, so great question, and 100% agree. In fact, I was going to talk about that when we dive into LinkedIn a little bit. So recruiters use this thing called a Boolean search, right? And a Boolean search is essentially we type in some keywords and a formula, and it will pull resumes of people who have identified those particular keywords. And so that just brings everybody to the top of the list that we know could be a fit. So yes, keywords, how to find them. What I would do is whatever job you're applying for, accountant, marketing coordinator, whatever, go to Indeed, do a job search, grab 10, type in, marketing coordinator, you're going to pull up 10 job openings, read through all of those. And there's going to be some consistencies there in terms of qualifications and what types of computer programs and things like that are needed for that type of role. And so you're going to see that out of 10 job postings, there's a lot of words that are in each one of those. And those are the words you may want to include, because when a recruiter or a hiring manager goes to do that search, those are the words that are very common in that particular role. So
yeah, I would say, so the keywords are more technical, right? Like Excel, right? And if you're in Excel, maybe they're looking for pivot tables or VLOOKUPs, right? Or if it's digital marketing, it could be social media, whatever it might be. But just know that they're going to be more technical terms for keywords, and don't think you have to have describing words about yourself. But yes, keywords are very important. Look at, like Dan said, just to echo him, look at the job description, look at a couple of job descriptions and find the similarities in there. And from those, you'll be able to pick up keywords and you'll be able to plug them into your resume.
Awesome. We got another question, and then we'll let you guys move on to another segment. But it's a student who's a freshman now, and he doesn't know when I should apply for internships and what I should include on my resume because they just don't have that much experience in his field.
That's good. You want to get it, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no harm in starting to apply today. There's no harm in going out and trying to find that real world experience today. And one thing you can do, and we've talked about this multiple times, is maybe it's not considered an internship. Maybe if you want to be in marketing, and I don't know why I keep using that example, but it's easy. So if you want to be in marketing, maybe you just go down the street to the local real estate office and you say, hey, do you need a couple flyers designed? And you do it real cheap. You do it for what you would make at Chick-fil-A or whatever. And that's real world experience. And maybe that's not considered an actual internship, but just start piling onto whatever you think you want to do or whatever your goal is by the time you graduate. Start piling up those micro internships at maybe freshman, sophomore level. And then you have something, a portfolio going into the internship interviews that you're going for your junior, senior level. So, but there's no problem with applying for it and going after it today. So
yeah, two really good points. Two things off of that. One, the internships that are available are just for people that don't have experience. Like majority of people applying to internships don't have that experience. Now you can get involved in student organizations and start to put that on your resume, or maybe you had some type of job in high school, or you're just now getting into the job market, whatever that might be. But there's going to be, internships are designed to get you some type of experience, entry-level work. Second, there is no shortage of companies looking for cheap labor, right? Whether it's free or minimum wage, whatever it might be. Even though, to be completely honest, I think unpaid internships are complete bullshit. I don't know if I can say that on here, but
you're good. You're good.
Okay, cool. But like Dan was saying, if you're like me or Dan and you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, so it's like, where should I go? Start to think about what you're interested in, right? Start to think about like where you spend your free time. How could you convert that into working? And then from there, look for internships, look for part-time jobs, And the idea here is even if it's a part-time job and you're going and washing dishes, right? But you want to go, off Dan's example, into marketing, okay? It's a small mom and pop shop in Jackson. Let's say it's tractors, right? You're washing dishes, but they want to get the word out to more people. Ask them, like, what can I take on? Can I manage your social media? You know, because chances are they're between the ages of like 40 to 60 that own the restaurant, and they're not going to be as social media savvy as you are. Can I create some flyers for you? Start to get into stuff where you can learn about stuff, even though you don't feel like an expert. The stuff that you know and you're learning in college is probably leaps and bounds way ahead of what they know in that area. Cool. So is that good? Are we good to move on?
That's fantastic for a resume segment. I couldn't ask for anything better. That's wonderful.
Cool. Very cool. So next, as we kind of touched on, the resume is very important. But let's face it, guys, it's 2020. That's only half the battle right now. Having a very updated and really optimized LinkedIn profile, not only now, but more so in the future, is going to really set you ahead of the curve. So Dan's going to talk about real quick about the importance of LinkedIn and how you can do that.
Yeah, so I definitely want to dive into LinkedIn because in my opinion, it's almost just as important as a resume right now.
Yep.
And it's super simple. I won't dive into like the technical how to build a resume or build a LinkedIn profile right now because it is fairly self-explanatory when you dive into it.
And just to let you know, we have a pre-recorded presentation on how to build a LinkedIn profile, and we offer hour-long appointments in our office where we will actually work with the student and help them build their LinkedIn profile.
That is awesome.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, so definitely utilize that, everyone, because in my opinion, LinkedIn's a very strong tool, and you should try to become a daily active user on it, right? So you should be logging in at least 3 times a week and just getting comfortable with it. And then one exercise, I guess, that I've talked to Matt about and we've said on the podcast is kind of list out your top 5 companies that you'd like to work for, or what kind of positions do you want to work in the future? Like even 20 years in your career, where do you want to be? And start to list out and formulate what that vision looks like. And what you can do on LinkedIn is start to try to add 10 or 20 people every time you log in who are either doing the things that you want to do or are working at companies that you want to work at. So if you want to work at Anheuser-Busch, which I consider a destination employer in St. Louis, start to connect with people there and ask them how they got onboarded with Anheuser-Busch and what was their transition out of college. And you can ask them about interview questions and what that looks like. There's so much stuff you can do on LinkedIn to set yourself up for success that I push so hard on becoming just a daily user, an active user on that platform. Another thing, going back to the keywords, so in that profile, really in the bio, build out those keywords, right? So we've already talked about it. We've already talked about, and you guys, that question kind of stole from what I was going to talk about a little bit, but throw those keywords into your bio section. But also a huge thing for me as a recruiter, add your contact information on that bio too, your phone number, your email, because I don't have to connect with you, but I still have your phone number if it's somewhere on there. And so I could just pick up the phone and call you versus having to connect with you, wait to message you, all this stuff. So any personal information that will get a recruiter in touch with you quicker, I would think about, and obviously upload your resume as a document on LinkedIn. Let's see what else. And then finally, the picture thing, right? So here, definitely a good picture, not a picture from prom or from the club or whatever. Like, let's get a good picture. And I've said this, and to me, if I see a really good picture, I'm thinking that person's an A player because they cared enough to go and get an actual headshot done or whatever. And I know that there may be an expense to that, and I know I'm talking to college kids, but there's got to be a photography major out there that is willing to do these for cheaper. I don't know if the Career Center has a headshot studio or something like that where they can get these really nice pictures, because when I see those, I'm like, hey, A, they're on LinkedIn quite a bit, so they're worth my time to reach out to, and B, they took it seriously. They didn't take a picture from, I don't know, Easter and throw it up there. So anyways, do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah, usually. So during regular semesters, when we're in our offices, we have the professional lighting and the backdrop, and we take the photo with the student's phone so that then they own it and they can edit it with what they will. But during this crazy time, a lot of it's going to be up to the student to actually find that good picture and not use a party pic.
So you know, even whether it's during COVID-19 or not, there's going to be a lot of career centers that aren't going to be as developed and don't have as many resources as you guys. So that being said, we all have iPhones. Like we all have, or you know, phones that have a developed camera on them with portrait mode. Ask your mom, ask your friend, ask your significant other to go out to a park and you know take a picture of you with portrait mode on it. That is perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be super expensive because we know that college kids are broke.
We've been there.
Yeah. And so that's it. Was that?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the quick rundown. I just because the resume is so much, and once you have that built out, that's kind of the foundation for putting together your LinkedIn profile, obviously. But just adding the easiest way for somebody to get a hold of you is a big thing, and then just getting on LinkedIn. So like for me personally, I've put together internship programs for companies before, and I don't know if it's a college class or something where they're required to put up a LinkedIn profile, but there'll be so many students that we reach out to, and they never log in. They never respond back because they did it for a project or something like that, and then they just quit using it. And so I think you're doing a disservice to yourself by not actively logging in and seeing if there's messages out there. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and we know oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, speaking of that and with LinkedIn, and what do you feel about when students reach out to you out of the blue? Somebody finds you and sends you a message or a LinkedIn request. What are you looking for to corroborate whether or not that connection is something you guys want to pursue?
That's a really good question. So if mostly, for the most part, if somebody tries to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm going to accept, unless it's just somebody in a completely different country that has nothing, not a developed LinkedIn profile that could look spammy, right? If you have all those things and you send me a connection request that Dan just talked about and you guys already provide help with, I'm most likely going to accept. I would say a personal, a little bit of a personalized message, because when you send a connection request, you have up to 300 characters that you can use on it, which is plenty of time to say, hey, Matt, wanted to reach out to you, saw you were a recruiter for Nestle Purina, right? I saw you've been doing that for about 2.5 years. It's something that I'm super interested in and aspire to be one day, or something along those lines. You don't have to look through their connections. You don't have to look through, what groups they have. Just something that shows it's somewhat personalized, that says, I saw how long you've worked there, and I saw that you went to my alma mater, or whatever it is. I would love to pick your brain so that I could get there someday. And we actually have a podcast that talks about this in detail, about how to send out some cold messages to prospective companies that you're looking to work for.
Yeah.
Right. It looks like we just got a question. It says, I've heard that putting your resume on LinkedIn is a bad idea because there's no reason for a recruiter to contact you. Can you explain why it's so important to do this?
Yeah. So can you say it one more time?
So that putting your resume on LinkedIn is a bad idea because it doesn't give the recruiter any reason to reach out to you and start a conversation and contact you.
So I actually think the opposite. So if I'm going through and I'm just putting myself in the process of finding entry level or an intern or whatever. So if I'm going through and I type in seeking internship, right, and it pulls up 5,000 students who are looking for either a job out of college or an internship. If I click on your profile and I don't have to connect with you and I don't have to waste a message or anything like that, but your resume is there with a phone number, I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling you directly because I already have your contact information and it's ready to go. And so I think that it's almost separate from whether your resume is on there or not. I think a recruiter is going to reach out to you because they are interested in your background, whether it's marketing, accounting, whatever, and the fact that you're looking for an internship or an entry-level job, regardless if the resume is there or not. They may still reach out even if it's not, but if it's there, it's just a faster, more streamlined way to get a hold of you.
So I'm gonna assume a little bit of a different approach on this, and maybe this individual is talking about okay, I want a job, right? And if I put my resume on LinkedIn, my resume might show that I'm not exactly qualified for a position. So if they look at my resume and they look at my qualifications on LinkedIn, they're going to know I'm not qualified, and they're not going to start the conversation, or they're not going to have the conversation. Realistically, they're going to find this out one way or another. So it's either early in the conversation or late in the conversation. As a recruiter, you want more information, right? You want to be able to see whether, like, it's our job. We don't know exactly what the role is. We're not doing the accounting for this person, but we have to understand what the basic qualifications are to get you through the door. That being said, if they don't reach out, or if they follow up and just say, hey, listen, you're not qualified, that's okay. Start a dialogue from there, right? Like, okay, hey, I understand, but just to let you know, you are a company that I'm very interested in. Would you be open to a conversation, right? And maybe they say no, but at the end of the day, if you don't ask, it's always a no, right?
And the worst thing that could happen is a no. So, and that's better than not even trying.
So the idea is to start a dialogue, especially if it's a company that you might be interested in. And even if they say no, ask them, yeah, no problem. I get it. You're really busy, but is there anything else about my resume that might stand out, or any positions that you see that are up and coming that I should be looking out for? Just ask those questions, because at the end of the day, we really don't see putting your resume on LinkedIn as something that would hurt.
Cool. Looks like we've got a question. Can you talk about the importance of the headline and summary statements on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want to? I'll jump in. So headline is super important to me, especially at the internship or entry level phase, because it shows, hey, recent college graduate seeking entry level position. If that's your headline, then, and if you put your major in there, that helps me a lot, because I don't have to click on your profile to find all that stuff out. So your headline is important, in my opinion, just because of that reason. So be very strategic with that. I know that's a short answer, but I think it drives the point home. And then in the summary, again, going back to like adding your contact information in there, that's a way to streamline a recruiter or hiring manager getting a hold of you. But I think that gives you a spot to kind of give a brief bio and why you're passionate about the major that you're in and what your goals are for your career, at least at that point of your life. And so I like to see those. I like to read those. So, for me, it's put it in there. Some people don't even put anything. So you're already separating yourself just by having something.
I think it's okay not to put that stuff. But it's an opportunity to set yourself ahead of the typical, right? I think successful people are successful because they do the things unsuccessful people refuse to do, right? But I look at it this way. Like, the most important things, if you've ever heard that analogy, like you fill a jar up with rocks, is it full? Then you fill it up with pebbles, then is it full? Then sand, then water. I'd say the rocks is your experience, right? Like getting the stuff that's on your resume into there. The tagline and stuff, although it could set you ahead, it's just not as important. It's just the stuff that's kind of the fillers in between the main things. But again, it's how much work you want to put into it. Do you want an opportunity to set yourself that much ahead of the curve?
Great. Now, I don't want to keep you guys from going on to another segment, but we do have a question about cover letters. When would you like to cover that?
So we can.
I wonder if we have different views on this.
So yeah, actually, we haven't talked about this. And honestly, we're good on however much time we need.
Okay. So run through your flow.
We want to get through every possible question. So I'll give you my take on cover letters.
I'm interested myself to see what he says.
It's a very educated opinion, and it's that they're bullshit. So it's okay. And I say this, it's not black and white, right? There's a lot of gray area there. But when I wrote my cover letters to the positions that I was applying for, I literally Googled cover letter template, right? And then added in, like, okay, insert company name here, insert date here, right? Insert position over here. That's what I would do. There might be some companies that require a cover letter, but I'll be honest, if you're applying to a Fortune 500 company or even smaller, right? A company with over 300 to 400 employees, nobody's going to look at your damn cover letter. Like it's literally going to be something that it's like as a recruiter, if I had to look at a cover letter, I'd open it up to say I looked at it and then be like, okay, what do I really want to know? what experience does this person have? If you're applying to a very small company where the CEO is looking over that and they want to know how bad do you want this? How bad do you want this role? Then yeah, maybe tailor your cover letter to the company, the values, the mission. But for the most part, I think cover letters are outdated and most people look over them.
Yeah, so actually I agree 100%. Cover letters go back to the resume piece where you're writing paragraphs on your experience that we don't want to look at. And in today's day and age, it's just so streamlined with a resume that if you wanted to actually put out some communication, maybe it goes back to connecting with them and sending them a personal note to that particular individual that you're trying to connect with versus a generalized cover letter. I just think that they are BS, and honestly, they don't push you any further ahead. And another thing, just so you guys know, in our process is when we call you and we screen you as a recruiter, we're writing all this stuff down, okay? And so when we submit you to the hiring manager or to the owner or the president or whoever, we're writing that cover letter basically for you in a very brief form. And so we're basically writing a summary and we're selling you as a candidate if you're a great candidate. And so you really don't even need to put that together, my opinion.
Yeah. Now don't take this as like if they ask for a cover letter, don't attach a Word doc that says Matt and Dan said cover letters are bullshit and you guys shouldn't be doing them anymore. If they ask for it, great. Again, take it situation by situation. If you're applying directly to someone who is a hiring authority and they ask you for a cover letter, if you're interested, definitely take the time, do research on the company, attach it to your resume. After, before, it doesn't really matter. But if it's a large company, majority of the time, if you just have like I'm incredibly interested in your company template that's out there, like that's probably going to work. And it might be an unpopular opinion to some, but I think that's kind of the stance we have.
And another thing, even with smaller companies, whenever you're submitting your resume to like the owner of a 20, 30 person business, it's an email, right? Like what's the difference between an email and a cover letter? That's your chance to create your cover letter. It's just that personalized email. So anyways, that's our thoughts.
Great question.
No, that's really good. And in career services, we've noticed that the interest in formal cover letters has been waning over the past several years. There are a lot of companies that don't require it. There are a lot of recruiters that have no interest in it. And so to speak to Christopher's question, generally always, we recommend, making it formal, make it look good, make it match your resume, because you want to make sure that it represents you. Even if it doesn't get looked at, you still want it to positively represent you and positively impact your chances with that organization.
Yep.
Cool. All right, that's the last question. So what's the next segment, guys?
Okay. So at the end of the day, optimizing your LinkedIn profile, we understand the importance of that now. But the real goal here is, one, you want to look good, but two, like you want recruiters to reach out to you. LinkedIn is an incredible tool that's going to get people to reach out to you to make your job as a candidate seamless and easy, right? And not that it is easy, but easier, I guess, is the right term. So once you build up a little bit of momentum on LinkedIn, you have recruiters reaching out to you, the next step is the interview, right? A lot of people are going to, if they're not necessarily interested in a position, they're going to turn down interviews. But at your stage in your career, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, interview experience is invaluable. So Dan wants to talk a little bit about why you should take every interview that you get.
Yeah. And so just to dive in with a quick, that's not really a story, but Matt and I graduated in 2011, 2012. Mm-hmm. So that was the last recession basically, right? So like we feel what you guys might be going through over the next 6 months to 18 months or whatever, however long this lasts. But when we got out of school, we were taking every interview because we had to. Like there was no option. It was like, we don't know what we're going to do. We're college graduates with no experience, and who's going to talk to us? So I was taking them at the time just because I had to. But what I would say is take every interview that you guys can get your hands on, because you're going to practice makes perfect, right? So you're going to get, you're going to go in and you're going to get over the nerves maybe of going on interviews after you've done 5 or 6 of them. You're going to see some similarities in questions that are asked, and you're just going to get better and better at your answers. And so the way I put this is kind of like, take a bunch of interviews that, even if you aren't necessarily interested in the company or the job, because there are a lot of jobs out there that are just they're not scams, but they come off as that as you walk through the interview process. But going on those interviews, get that benefit of getting the practice in, because let's say you want to work at Google and you've gone on no practice interviews because you're just in your mind, hey, I'm working at Google, and you have no practice going into the dream job of your life. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice again without going on those 4, 5, 10 interviews prior to going into that one with Anheuser-Busch or with Google or whoever. And so you're set up for success going into that dream job, right? And so that's one thing that I think is super important. Another thing is like just it's your full-time job to find a job or your full-time job to find an internship. And so going on these interviews just kind of creates some momentum around your job search, right? So if I go on 3 interviews, 4 interviews, all of a sudden I have offers coming through, and maybe I don't take those offers, and maybe I wasn't interested in that company, but it's going to start creating that snowball effect of momentum with your search. And then and then finally, you're going to be able to see the difference in culture just by going on multiple interviews. And you're going to kind of formulate, this is the kind of company I want to work at because I clicked really well with this person or that person. And you're going to go on some other interviews that are super dry and just not as engaging. And you're like, I don't know if I want to work there. But if you only go on 1 or 2 and take the first job, like maybe you kind of didn't get a chance to really see what else is out there and kind of get that practice, I guess. So,
yeah, I agree 100% with that. It's whether or not you think it's a waste is just a matter of perspective, because whether you want a position or not, it's a learning experience. Every interview you're going on is going to polarize you. And that's the idea, right? Like they bring you in because they want to know, do I want this candidate? Do I not want this candidate? You go in there with the same perspective, right? You are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So you've got to ask yourself coming out of there, do I want this position? Do I not want this position? Do I want this company? Do I not want this company? Everything top to bottom, and make sure you're doing an evaluation of that. Make sure you're not wasting it, because whether you get the job or not, you should come out with a better developed understanding of where you want to go with your career, even if it's moving in inches. Yeah.
So every time, whenever I talk to students about interviews, I always tell them the story of the worst interview that I have ever participated in, where we gave the candidate a complimentary bottle of water, and then she subsequently held the bottle of water up against her face throughout the remainder of the entire interview, even answering a question with it on the bridge of her nose. So when you guys think about bad interviews, what's that experience that you think of? What's the bad interview that always pops into your head?
Yeah, so we actually were thinking about doing a segment. There's so many stories out there with bad interviews, and maybe not even bad interviews, but just situations that happen. Because I have a really funny one, and she ended up getting the job.
Wow.
But I mean, Matt, do you have any?
Go ahead.
Any bad one? I mean, can I jump into that one? Because it's just
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I mean, we have so many interviews going on all the time with our clients and our candidates, and so we get these stories quite a bit. And one was for it's called an underwriter. It's in the mortgage industry. And she went in, they flew this lady in for the interview. She's meeting with the CEO and the COO and all these people, and they go out to lunch. Well, she ends up choking on a bagel, and like they had to do the Heimlich maneuver and things like that, like in front of a CEO, a COO, all this stuff. And I mean, luckily she was okay. Otherwise I wouldn't be telling the story, but just like those situations may come up, and to me that it was like, how does this happen? But it did happen. And she ended up getting the job offer because I guess she interviewed the rest of the time very well. But I always like to tell that story for some reason.
Moral of the story, don't choke on your bagel or any of your food. But obviously didn't disqualify her. But it leads to a good point, right? Like there's a lot of times that we see these funny situations happen where it's just like, okay, this seems like common sense, but it's not so common, right? Like we're going to give you a water, because you're talking a lot. You can drink it. Don't use it to kind of hold it up against your face and talk. And like don't, again, you want to use your common sense a lot, but that kind of brings us to what are some good tips for the interview, right? How do I prepare? And I think a couple of things is dress professionally, but and it's weird, you know, when if we go back to when I graduated in 2012, it's, you know, guys want to wear a suit, a jacket, a tie, like, you know, girls want to dress business professional as well, right? And there's some guidelines around there, but in this day and age, you want to dress to who you're interviewing with, right? Like if you're, like I have a client here, Drive Social Media, they're a digital marketing agency. And if you're applying for a sales position with a sales team, you're dressing completely different than if you're applying for a copywriter or a graphic designer. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's, you know, it's understand that obviously you don't want to super underdress, but don't be afraid in some instances to express who you are through the way that you dress, right?
And I'll add, like, if you guys ever have a question over what should I wear to an interview, you can ask whoever scheduled the interview. Like, how do you guys dress at the office? Is it business professional? Is it business casual? You know, so you don't feel scared to ask that question once you have that interview set. So
yeah, and then there's a couple of tips that I want to go over. There are some of my personal favorites. Again, we do an entire podcast on this, but in an interview, before you get to an interview, this is what everybody's going to tell you, and it's true, do homework on the company, right? So I had an instance just a couple of weeks ago where my client turned down a candidate because this candidate was a marketing agency that really focused in the software world. And when talking about the company in the interview, this guy started talking about how cool he thinks their software is when they don't do any type of software. Right? It's real simple. It's real basic. You don't have to know the founder's story about how he came up with the idea, but take a look at the company website, understand maybe the values or whatever it is. Just know a basic understanding of what they do. And then a really good cheat sheet you can find online is go on Glassdoor.com. Glassdoor is an incredible resource that will tell you the reviews on the company. It'll tell you the pros, the cons, just like Yelp will tell you about your favorite restaurant. And then a lot of times there's a section in Glassdoor that will tell you what the interview process is like. Not only the positives and negatives, but some of the questions that were asked. So do your homework on the company as much as you possibly can. And then this next one is going a little bit above and beyond the Call of Duty, but working at Purina and any other bigger companies, they participate in what's called behavioral-based interviewing. Behavioral-based interviewing is when the company is going to ask you a question that'll sound a lot like, tell me a time when. Tell me a time when you had a conflict with a coworker. Tell me a time when this or that. So whether the company does this or not, this is an incredible opportunity for you to start to craft your story. So kind of piggybacking off what we talked about earlier, when you go to the job description, if you look through the first 3 to 7 bullets, it's going to tell you what's most important in that position and what they're looking for. So what you would do is you take a look at that bullet, and let's say it talks about customer service, right? So you're going to ask yourself, tell me about a time when I had a really good example of customer service. Something as simple as that. And then you're going to get out a pen and paper, you're going to get out a Word doc, and you're going to answer in this format that's called the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So just to give you kind of an idea of how you can structure it. So situation, give the background of the situation and what's going on. Task, what was the task that was given to you or the problem that presented itself? Action, this is the most important part. Again, whether they ask this or not, this is going to be an incredible experience for you to get to really start to communicate what it is that you're doing. The action tells you step by step what you did, and more importantly, why you did it. When a company hires someone, they always want to see somebody that understands the big picture, AKA they always want to know somebody that understands their actions are going to have a specific recourse, right? So if you can explain what you did step by step and why you did it, that's incredible. And then the last thing, the result. You want to give the result, and if you can quantify it, if you can put it to numbers, if you can put it to metrics, if you can put it to anything, it's going to be really important. Obviously, good results are going to be better. We all know that. But sometimes you don't get a good result. If you have a great story that explains the actions that you did were incredible and go above and beyond, or if you can point to your actions, and even though it didn't have the best result, what you actually learned from that, That's going to be a big story. And then finally, once you finish writing that out, practice it. Practice it over and over again and start to develop a book of all the experience that you've had over your career. And when I say practice it, you can practice with a friend, you can practice with a spouse, you can practice with your mom, your dad, you can practice in the mirror or to your dog. I will tell you that I've done this before in an interview where I have practiced in a mirror. And if you think you're going to come out like of an interview, maybe sounding awkward, you will never sound or feel more awkward than explaining to yourself what you've been doing in your last job. So it's good to get that out ahead. And just like everything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel, the more free flowing of a conversation it is and confident that you come off.
Great.
So, yeah. So, and those are the big tips that I have. Yeah. Those are the biggest things that I have in preparing for an interview. And at this point, I guess we can open it up to any questions.
Yeah. Any of the students that are logged in, please feel free, ask any questions, unmute yourself, write any questions in the group chat. This is fantastic information that you guys are presenting, because it's the information that we try to get out to students as best as possible, how to be the best candidate, how to, build the foundation of a successful career with that good looking resume, and then let that good looking resume and good looking LinkedIn profile get you an interview, and then have good interview skills, and that will get you into the job. And so it's all those elemental steps of working towards career success and success in the job search. So
absolutely
fantastic information.
Yep.
Let's see. Any questions out there, guys?
And if there end up being no questions, this is perfectly fine. Like I said, and this actually, I think, is running right about on time again. We've got all the time in the world to answer any questions. But at the end of this, we're going to send you an email that's going to have all of our information, all of our resources. So we've got PDF guides on how to structure that resume, how to build the LinkedIn. I know you guys do that. Again, our job is to be an added resource on top of career centers. And then as we continue to do our podcast, we're going to come up with a couple of other resources for play-by-plays.
No, that's perfect. And I encourage any student that's listening, find me on LinkedIn, and you will find both Matt and Dan on LinkedIn. So make sure that you connect with them. They're a great resource to have. They're fantastic people to be out there. Jennifer just asked, when and where can people access the Internship podcast?
Yeah, so we're on Anchor, so we're on Spotify, we are on iTunes. You can go to the internshippodcast.com and listen to it directly through our website as well. We release a new episode every Monday. And I think, what are we doing this week?
So this week, what are we releasing, or what are we? So I think this past week we released.
We recorded an episode about internships being canceled due to the coronavirus, and how you can kind of pivot a little bit and still build up some experience. So it's a pretty cool episode. But yeah, I mean, we have I think we're on our 11th episode now, and we're on all the platforms.
We're on all the platforms. Like I said, we'll send you a link to all of that stuff. And then this week, tomorrow, we're actually recording whether or not you should get an MBA. And then starting next week, we're going to have on guests, right? I think the idea is to have on guests that have created success in every industry possible. So one of the things that we're going to touch on is we're going to have a guest on that has his own fitness, it's called Scott Health and Fitness. So he's a personal trainer. He's also a million other things on the side.
This guy's amazing.
But he's going to talk about not only how he built his career and how people are looking into fitness, how he can do that, but the importance of what he does, the importance of why your physical fitness and nutrition can carry over to success both in school and in the workplace. So
and that's just one example. We're going to have CEOs from companies. We're going to have some other influencers in this space that maybe don't talk about the job search and whatnot. But that's the goal for the podcast. Really, we just want to help you guys out. If we can provide one nugget of value that helps you think of something a little bit differently, that can set you up for success, that's what it's all about for us. And so, yeah, I mean, check us out, iTunes, Spotify.
Perfect. And for the students that are listening, we're going to be posting links to the Internship podcast. So we want to make sure you guys have easy access to all that information. So just look for it on all the CMO Career Services social media, because it's all great information. It's all stuff that students need to know. And it's great for every SEMO student and alum that's still connected with SEMO Career Services to get that information out there.
Absolutely.
So I cannot thank you guys enough for taking your lunch hour, an hour of your day to talk to SEMO. It's fantastic because we, down here in Cape Girardeau, we're always just trying to stay as connected with everybody as possible. So thank you for taking this time. And I can't be more thankful.
Dan, we appreciate you taking the time. Honestly, it's incredible how proactive you've been throughout this entire thing. Setting up the webinar, reaching out to us through social media. It just shows, it actually makes me pretty proud of my alma mater that you guys are taking all these steps in helping people and students set themselves up for success. So we appreciate that.
That means the world to me. We tried, the SEMO Career Services office has changed a lot probably since you graduated, but we really try our hardest. We are over and above. We kind of function like an on-campus headhunting agency now, and so we take that proactive step. We push items out. We sent out 41,000 emails to students last year specific to their major and different internships and jobs. So we really keep pushing. A lot of students on campus think it's hilarious, and they know my email address because my first initial and my last name looks remarkably like depression@cmo.edu. And so it's just really an interesting, it's an interesting thing, but students have gotten used to us, and we just keep trying to push out pertinent information that's worthwhile, that just kind of shows their value and shows how great they can be in a company setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, I have a feeling that we're going to be working together to collaborate. Once this is all over, we'd love to come down to SEMO and visit and talk a little bit more.
Come on down. I'll buy you lunch at Pilot House.
All right, deal. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys again. I'll send you the recording of this will be available. So thank you guys. I can't thank you enough for spending your time with us.
And now thanks for taking your time to listen and allow us on this platform. We really appreciate that. So
awesome. Gentlemen, have a good day. See y'all later.
Yes.